I'm Sarah Kelly. Thank you very much for joining us. The Battle of Aleppo is on the brink. That is according to France's ambassador to the UN ahead of an emergency meeting of the Security Council called as Syrian government troops massacres of civilians since World War II. That is according to France's ambassador to the UN ahead of an emergency meeting of the Security Council called in the past few days as the Syrian government army continues their offensive to reclaim the city from the rebel forces. The eastern part of the city has been under government siege for months. International aid stock continues their offensive to reclaim the city from the rebel forces. The eastern part of the city has, well, speaking yesterday, the UN Syria envoy warned that eastern Aleppo could imminently.
And clearly, I cannot deny this is a military acceleration. And I can't tell you how long eastern Aleppo will last. The latest informations are say
that at least 45 people have been killed as they try and flee rebel-held areas. A member of the White Helmets rescue team told the German agency DPA that they came under fire as they tried to escape. Troops and Islamic State militants. A team of German journalists traveled to the war-torn city to see how the battle to remove IS fighters has put civilians on the front line.
We're in Mosul, Iraq's second largest city.
Has put civilians on the front line.
We're in Mosul. Iraq's of German journalists is traveling inside recaptured parts of eastern Mosul with elite Iraqi troops known as the Golden Division. But these areas are still dangerous. IS has left behind explosive booby traps everywhere, hidden in the ground like here to the left and right of this wall. We're taken to one of IS's key reinforcement points underneath a mosque. This tunnel system is about 2 kilometers long.
Is it cleared? Can we go inside?
Yeah. Come on.
Special forces have cleared the tunnel's exit, which is in a village outside the city. It's unclear whether the tunnel was used to transport weapons or simply to move people around undercover. IS put the tunnel entrance under the mosque because it's a holy place. No one would bomb this. That's why they used buildings like this as cover. We meet with General Abdel Wahab al-Saidi, one of the commanders in charge of driving Islamic State out of Mosul. We're here in the district of Muharabin. The battlefront line is about 400 or 500 meters in this direction. You can see we're fighting from street to street. Iraq's army tries to evacuate neighborhoods where fighting is taking place. But IS often takes cover among the civilian population, making it hard to distinguish between friend and foe. Like in this house. 2 IS fighters lie dead on the ground. It's thought they're from France. They hid themselves in a building next to where a family lived. No one can move the bodies. One of them is probably wearing an explosive. Fighters lie dead on the ground. It's thought they're from France. They hid themselves in a building next to where a family lived. No one can move the bodies. One of them, or mortars. That's the problem. There are houses with families, and the IS fighters are right there too. And so the civilians are caught in the middle. This Iraqi army footage shows IS shooting at residents trying to flee. They're considered deserters. The wounded are taken to a makeshift field hospital on the outskirts of Mosul, where they're given emergency care. The day before yesterday, we had one of the sons lost both legs. We leave Mosul, an embattled city whose liberation is certainly months away.
Let's turn to some other news now, because Brazilians have been coming together to mourn the Chapecoense footballers who perished when their plane went down in Colombia. 71 people aboard the charter aircraft were killed. 6 people survived. Green lights lit up Rio de Janeiro's iconic Christ the Redeemer statue, honoring the team with their colors. Relatives of one of the victims held a memorial service by the statue on Tuesday. The Chapecoense team was on its way to Colombia to play in top competition when headquarters their plane crashed to grieve shortly before the loss for the airline lost due to land at Medellin Airport.
My heart is in pieces.
Friends and family
I'm in a
of the
lot of
victims
pain.
also
It is incredibly difficult. I never thought I'd go through this. I can't believe it. He called me just before the flight, and after that I didn't hear anything else. I'd go through this. I can't believe it. He called me just before the flight, and after that I didn't.
Of the players, only one remains in intensive care. This comes as international investigators arrive in Colombia to help authorities establish what caused the disaster. Now, a video posted to Twitter by a local journalist. This comes as international investigators arrive in Colombia to help authorities establish what caused the disaster. Into the mountains of the remote Cerro Gordo region. The dense highlands are very difficult to access, further complicating investigations. And while the aircraft's 2 black boxes have been recovered, officials say that it could take a while before their contents have been analyzed. There's no evidence of an explosion on impact, so experts are now speculating that the plane went down because it had run out of it. It could take a while before their contents have been analyzed. There's no evidence of an explosion on impact, so experts spectacular season. Have a look.
It was meant to be the trip of their careers, but ended like this. The Chapecoense players were heading to their biggest ever game, the Copa Sudamericana finals. Nearly the whole team died in the crash, as did most of the journalists, officials and club guests on board. Football-mad Brazil is stunned. Its president declared 3 days of mourning. I want to express my sadness for the awful incident which has caused the death of a soccer team and many people who accompanied the team from Chapeco. It happened early this morning. It's extremely sad. Team fans held vigils to pray for the victims. The club's vice president struggled for words. Everybody's placed their confidence in God that things will go well for us. Our Chapecoense will have to go on. It's difficult. It's so difficult to speak. I don't have any more opinions. I don't know what else to say. This video is one of the last of the team, checking in for their flight. Then, full of excitement, ahead of the match of their lives.
Well, thousands of people have gathered in South Korea's capital, Seoul, on Wednesday to protest against President Park Geun-hye. Park is under mounting pressure following a massive corruption scandal. After 5 straight days of protests calling for her resignation, Park on Tuesday said that she would be willing to step down if Parliament impeached her. The West African country Gambia goes to the polls tomorrow in general elections. The favorite to win is the incumbent of the past 22 years, President Yahya Jammeh. Human Rights Watch says that the atmosphere running up to the election has been marked by a climate of fear and suppression of the opposition. The United Nations has also complained of the detention of journalists and opposition members. Our West Africa correspondent, Adrian Krish, has this report from Gambia.
Michael recalls how April the 16th began peacefully. Michael is not his real name. The activist has to protect his identity. On that day in April, he joined many others in a protest against the imprisonment of those who oppose the government in Gambia. Security forces broke up the protests violently, and 30 protesters were sentenced to 3 years in prison.
we don't have freedom and then right to express your ideas and other feelings in this country anymore. Now there's only fears in this country. Still now they are still charging people. If you are part of them or if you are saying anything on Facebook or any other social media, they always make sure they capture you and then they take you. Nobody will know wherever you are.
President Yahya Jammeh rose to power through a coup 22 years ago. And he often makes menacing headlines with his threats to kill homosexuals, to expel overly critical diplomats, or withdraw Gambia from the International Criminal Court. Jammeh has already won numerous elections, but observers and the opposition regularly say that the proceedings are dubious. In the upcoming poll, 2 candidates are running against Jammeh. And for the first time, also a large alliance of opposition groups, led by Adama Barrow. He promises more freedom and an end to fear in Gambia.
The president, I think he have taken this country backwards. He haven't done much for this country. If you look at the infrastructure, in 1975 is even better than now. Road network in the capital is very, very bad. This situation is deteriorating seriously in this country. We need a change to forge ahead.
Gambia's revenues mostly come from agriculture and tourism. But young people here complain about a lack of prospects. Every year, hundreds leave with the goal of reaching Europe.
President Jammeh and the ruling party reject the massive criticism of human rights organizations and the opposition. Gambia, they say, is well on the way, and after ruling 22 years, the president is still the right person for the job.
Jammeh's supporters say he has made advancements in health and education. They deny that there is a climate of fear or suppression of oppositional voices, a criticism leveled at the government by Human Rights Watch.
It's wrong. There's no suppression on oppositions here in this country. But we know the die is cast, knowing our people behind us, and they are still in support of the president. We know come December 1st, we'll be the victor. We know about that. We are not worried about that. The only thing that we are worried of is for our percentage not to go down, but to increase.
President Jammeh may well garner more than 72% of the vote in the election, says the activist Michael, because of the intimidation tactics being used. But he will not give up. This activist will continue to fight peacefully for change.
You're watching DW News. We have to take a short break, but when we come back, Cuba bids goodbye to its longtime leader in a memorial in the capital. Tens of thousands of Cubans turn out in Revolution Square to remember Fidel Castro. And how shop owners and passengers cope with Lufthansa's pilot strike at Frankfurt International Airport. Christoph Kober has that story in business news right after the break. Don't go away.
Your children like chocolate? You can't live without your smartphone. Do you buy your tomatoes in the supermarket? As we go about our daily lives, human rights are often the last thing on our minds. Invisible Hands. Slavery in the 21st Century. Starting December 10th on DW.
Stories. Tens of thousands of people are fleeing fighting in Syria's Aleppo as government troops push to reclaim territory from rebel forces. A member of the White Helmets rescue group says that dozens of people have been killed as they tried to leave rebel-held areas. Brazilians are mourning the Chapecoense football players and other victims who perished when their plane went down in Colombia on Monday night. 71 people aboard the charter aircraft were killed. 6 others survived. Well, in business news, day 2 for this week's Lufthansa strike, and passengers are asking themselves, when will it end? Christoph Kober has that story for us on our business desk. Hi, Christoph.
Sarah, Thursday is the day travelers have been waiting for. Service will be back to normal tomorrow. Well, almost. Lufthansa said it is canceling 40 flights on Thursday as a result of the strike of its pilots. Well, the situation today is much more severe. Lufthansa canceled a combined total of 1,700 flights on Wednesday and the day before. The number of passengers affected by strikes over the past week is now at more than 500,000. And not just travelers are annoyed by the disruptions.
This couple is sitting at Frankfurt Airport chatting online with their grandson in South Korea. At least they have free Wi-Fi. They also have plenty of time on their hands, just like other Lufthansa passengers here at the airport. Lufthansa pilots are on strike again, and patience is required from passengers. Lots of patience. Numerous flights are canceled. Some have been delayed for hours. At least the airport shops open on time, even if they too are affected by the strike. This men's clothing store normally takes in around 3,000 euros a day, but so far, today's sales amount to just 30 euros. Passengers are important to us because the money they spend here keeps our business going. Without passengers, we lose our customer base.
Obviously, there is some issues in the company that need to be solved, because I've been at the airport for some time, not only on the land side, also on the air side, and there have been some strikes for the past years.
There's nothing going on here. It's dead. The shops are empty, and that's bad for us. It's crazy. Our retail business has collapsed. When they go on strike, it's a luxury they can afford. We have other problems to deal with. I would ask the pilots if it's really necessary to drag this out so long. We can't talk to the pilots. They're on strike. So we'll talk to the passengers. This pair is waiting for Lufthansa to rebook their flight back home to Greece after a visit to Germany.
What does it say on time?
It doesn't say at all. It said planned and scheduled. It doesn't say nothing.
So it's going to be a surprise.
Hope not! Thank you.
They got lucky. Their flight took off just a few hours later than planned.
The world's top oil producers started their meeting in Vienna earlier today with pressure building to finalize a deal that would cut production and raise prices. But investors are growing uneasy as large producers like Iran, Iraq and Saudi Arabia continue to be at loggerheads. Oil prices have plummeted by nearly half in the past 2 years to around 50 euros a barrel. So many producers hope cutting production will restore prices and stabilize their economies. Investors are eyeing that OPEC meeting in Vienna, and so is our very own Janelle Dumoulin at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. There will be an agreement today. That's what an Iraqi delegate said ahead of the negotiations today. Janelle, do investors feel the same way?
No, Christoph, not really. And you already mentioned why. There were all these tensions ahead of the meeting. Iran, for example, is resisting a production cut because it needs to up its market share. After the sanctions have been lifted, Iraq says it needs the oil revenue to fight ISIS. And Saudi Arabia has basically said that it could live without a deal. So it's funny because the OPEC members all broadly agree that there would be a reason to do this deal, but nobody wants to be left with a bag, so to speak. And there's the rub. Skepticism is simply growing that OPEC countries will be able to coordinate sufficiently to be able to swing prices in a way that they were once able to. And this meeting is going to be just about OPEC's credibility and relevance just as well.
Now, Janelle, if a deal were struck, how much of an impact would it actually have?
Well, Christoph, enforceability is definitely going to be an issue. OPEC members are notorious for ignoring production quotas. It also depends on what non-OPEC oil producers like Russia are going to do and how the U.S. shale market develops. Let's not forget that U.S. fracking also contributed to the oversupply and depressed prices. So there are a lot of wild cards around the oil market that would go beyond any potential OPEC deal, and as such, the impact could be limited.
Janelle Dumoulin in Frankfurt. Thank you very much. Now, you could call him the Mark Zuckerberg of his time. Along with a handful of other engineers, Werner von Siemens laid the foundations of our startup culture today. The talented inventor started out with a telegraph business that eventually grew into one of Germany's industrial giants, Siemens. The company is now celebrating the 200th birthday of its founder in Berlin.
A ceremony in Berlin. Siemens chief Joe Kaeser and the German Chancellor who delivered the anniversary speech. In 1881, Siemens brought the first electric tram to Berlin, testament to the city's spirit of progress.
Eine Sensation, die von der Fortschrittlichkeit der Stadt zeugte.
Werner von Siemens was already famous then. It was 25 years earlier that everything had begun with his business partner Georg Halsker. In the backyard of his Berlin tenement house, he began to build telegraph devices. It was 1847, and his electric-pointed telegraph would revolutionize the way we communicate. An 11,000-kilometre-long telegraph line from London to Calcutta was his first major international contract. When Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, some 30 years later, Siemens developed improved handsets. Then Werner von Siemens opened his telecommunications company in Berlin. More brainwaves followed. Siemens worked with his chief engineer to come up with the dynamo machine, the electric motor and the electricity generator. By 1872, he employed 1,600 people in Berlin. Today, the Siemens Group employs around 350,000 people worldwide. But it hasn't all been sunshine. 10 years ago, corruption cast a cloud over the company. Under the leadership of Heinrich von Pierer, managers paid 1.3 billion euros in bribes to potential clients. Pierer and numerous employees were either dismissed or walked away. Today, Siemens remains one of Europe's biggest engineering companies, specialising in renewable energy and making everything from trains to state-of-the-art medical technology. Now it's entering into the age of Industry 4.0, with the hope of remaining as innovative as its founder.
And that's all your business for this hour. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Christoph. Cuba is paying tribute to the man who shaped the country for decades, Fidel Castro. Foreign dignitaries joined tens of thousands of Cubans to say goodbye to the communist leader at a mass ceremony in the capital. He's celebrated by many as a symbol of resistance, but others will remember him as a tyrant who denied his people human rights. And for that reason, Western countries have sent only low-level delegations to Havana.
Gone, but not forgotten. These Cubans have come to Revolution Square in Havana to pay their respects to a man who ruled their nation for nearly half a century. It's as much a remembrance of Fidel Castro's ideology as it is a celebration of national pride. I admire his life, his history. We are him, we are Fidel. We were born and we grew up with him, with his ideas and values. But it's not just Cubans in mourning. Some 25 leaders from Latin America, the Caribbean and Africa all gathered to pay tribute. The immense love shows us that Fidel and his ideas live in the hearts of millions of people who follow his example as a tireless fighter for the good of humanity. We, in faraway Greece, fight for justice and dignity. And in that fight, we are accompanied and will always have with us Fidel's example, in our victories and in our defeats, in our challenges and our agreements. But many Western leaders have stayed away, underscoring Castro's polarising legacy. Even friendly nations like China and Russia have sent only deputies as representatives. Castro's ashes are to travel 900 kilometres from Havana to Santiago de Cuba, where the longtime leader will be laid to rest on Sunday.
A quick reminder now of our top stories. Tens of thousands of people are fleeing fighting in Syria's Aleppo as government troops push to reclaim territory from rebel forces. A member of the White Helmets Rescue Group says that dozens of people have been killed as they tried to leave rebel-held areas. Brazilians are mourning the Chapecoense football players and other victims who perished when their plane went down in Colombia on Monday night. 71 people aboard the charter aircraft were killed. 6 others survived. You're up to date on DW News. I'm Sarah Kelly in Berlin. Thank you very much for tuning in.